Okay, well, sorry about that. No, that was fantastic. You have to translate for us later. But no, welcome to the Spotlight panel for Esad Ribic and Adi Granov.
Hello.
Two of the most influential modern-day superhero comic book creators, whose work can be seen not only in the comics, but being translated into all different various media around the world as well, the films and the TV series. And both of you starting to be not too far away from each other, but it's become quite a journey from either side of what was then Yugoslavia. Can you tell me about, both of you, the journey from where you began to where you are now? Esad, let's review.
Okay, so in the late 80s, my first career was animation. I was working in this company called Zagreb Film. And then war came and basically the studio got stuck, so I kind of started looking for work abroad. Not before ending up in war for a year. That was pretty much it. Like once Yugoslavia was no more, there was no comics market where you could really make a living from doing that stuff. So it was either looking for some proper job, as my mother would say, or looking for some artwork, you know, abroad. So that's...
What would she consider a proper job back then?
Oh, I don't know. Working on the gas pump, being a doctor, whatever in between, you know. Even selling shit on the green market would be, in her universe, that would be something, you know, better than, because when she looks at me now, she sees an unemployed guy, you know.
Has she in any way come round to the fact that what you're doing might be of worth?
At some point, yeah, but it took decades for her to give up the dream of me doing, I don't know, driving trucks.
So how did you make that journey, especially for American work? What was the job? So how did you move to American work, working for the American companies like Marvel and Antarctic first, I guess?
Back in say '95, I just started sending my. That's when I realized I couldn't really make a living back home from doing what I do. So I just started sending my stuff around. And I was actually aiming for European market because I grew up on mostly French, Italian, Spanish comics, you know. But I never got any response, except that it looks too American for them. So I sent the same stuff to US, and they said it looks too European for them. So I decided to do like a mock, like what was back then popular 10-page thing in American style, and that's basically what got me a job, first offer in the US. That's how I ended up there. At the same time, I was doing the same mock-up of European style. You know, for French, they never responded.
So what were your earliest influences? What did you want to be?
Well, my first comics that I really liked were this really shitty Italian Bonelli comics stuff. And basically when I was 7, I aspired to be that. But by 9, I realized that they were crap, so I moved on to something else. But really when I started kind of developing and drawing more and more was when I discovered Herman and Mobius. Those were like two of my biggest earliest influences. And then later some other European artists, like there was this guy Fernando Fernandez. I really liked his stuff, like I copied it a lot, you know, for a while. There were some other painters. I never only read comics, you know, I was very much into illustration and all kinds of art, you know, fine art. Like probably what got me painting was at the same time, roughly, I kind of discovered Frank Frazetta and Caravaggio. And those two things, I was 8. Those two things kind of really had an effect on me. So I would say it's still today, like I see my style as kind of mix of those two, mostly when I paint.
Well, you can see, you've had a very different experience of the war, how that affected you in your career. Tell us what happened, because you were about 16 at the time,
Yeah, I mean, I think our starts were probably similar because in Yugoslavia, comics were just a part of life. We really were a very big comic culture. So growing up, you know, news agents just had so many, especially like Esad said, Italian comics. But then, yeah, for me, I'm a couple of years younger than Esad. When the war started, I was just starting art school, so I was 15. And then I was in the war for 2.5 to 3 years. And then we decided to leave, and I became a refugee for a couple of years. And then it's a long story. But
it's quite a moving one, it's quite a strong one.
yeah, I mean it is. You know, it's a pretty kind of difficult tale of, you know, survival and being an illegal immigrant in Croatia, that kind of stuff. And then we
Yeah, for a while he was living in the same city.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we applied. I say we, my family, and my mom and sister and I, we applied to join the resettlement program to the US in '85, and again, long story, but eventually we got accepted, and you know, it was a law. It kind of, now when I watch the news and when I look at all of the issues with, you know, immigration and refugees and displacement and stuff, I know a lot about it, but it also a lot of it has changed from the time, because when we were doing it, it was the Clinton administration. It was a very different type of, not to be too political or anything, it was a different time to do what we did, and I think probably quite a bit easier. I mean, not easy, but still very, very difficult. But even like this thing, sorry, probably going down, this thing where they're canceling various aid programs, and like they're talking about canceling food stamps and stuff like that. We survived in the US on food stamps for, you know, a number of years, well, not a number of years, couple of years, I guess, which we probably couldn't have. And then when we were there, I decided I needed to get back to some kind of art education, because in the US they are very, very focused on degrees and focused on, you know, what kind of qualifications you have.
So how old were you at this time?
At this point, 19. So I went to art college in Seattle and kind of just got through it, got into a lot of debt that I didn't even understand what it was, you know, because I was 15 when the war started, and suddenly I was 19 having to get a credit card and debt and all this stuff, and I had no idea what any of that was. But anyway, it worked out. It worked out because I got a job at Nintendo straight out of college. I graduated, and during my graduation ceremony, I got hired to be a concept artist at Nintendo. And then kind of just slowly kept rolling from then on, and I, you know, have been kind of self-employed as an artist ever since.
Unemployed.
Unemployed as an artist, yeah.
I mean, I must ask, the origins of superhero comics often seem to come out of war, and the experiences that kind of creators kind of went through back in the 30s and 40s. You look into the people like Stanley and Jack Kirby especially. His work came from actually fighting in Europe at the time. Did you find any of the war that you kind of surrounded had any impact on the work that you were enjoying in terms of like hugely kind of action scenes or destruction or death?
I mean, I'm sure it's shaped a lot of what I am, but I actually actively try to avoid. You know, I used to, when I was first in the US as a refugee, they used to ask me to come out and like speak to schools, and then they were, you know, oh, you should do a comic about this, or you should do, and I wanted to do science fiction, something, you know, superheroes. I wanted to listen to heavy metal. I wanted to leave the war behind, and I wanted to kind of move on with life. So I'm sure subconsciously it's hugely influenced me. I noticed, especially in my work, not so much the war, but I'm definitely influenced, especially by like brutalism, like brutalist architecture, that kind of communist and socialist huge art projects, you know, big statues, and that I definitely was influenced by. in my art. But like as far as the war itself goes, it's probably more subconscious than conscious.
I do you just think that you're probably most famous for is the Iron Man work, a superhero who is a weapons manufacturer. It does kind of seem to tie in a little bit, psychologically.
I mean, possibly. I didn't write the story, so it's just that I would say that the design work is definitely influenced more by that very sculptural quality of like I said, brutalist kind of like socialist, especially monuments and statues, and they have that like really kind of brutal and like really iconic look to it. And I think I've been trying to kind of recapture that in my work my whole life, basically.
Can I ask, do you have any comments on that? Did you find any of the events around you impacting on your work, especially around the superhero action kind of thing? Or?
Since I started drawing professionally before the war, so I got stuff before and after. Apart from the later stuff being better, I don't see any difference that much, so I don't think so. The thing is, if you look for it, you will find it. Because if you spend 5 years of your life in garage, repairing cars, it will affect your later life in some ways. So whatever it is, there's going to be some effect. Whether it's conscious, not really. Like, I know that I don't like to glamorize the violence and stuff like that. When I depict that in the comics, I try to make it more like chaotic and stuff. Maybe something that resembles reality much more. Like a lot of people like to kind of turn it into ballet and stuff like that, which is kind of like, almost commodifying it. It's something not threatening. When you do it that way, when you design it, it's kind of like if you see two people fighting in front of a pub, and when you see a kung fu movie, it's not the same thing,
Absolutely, that's a fantastic way of describing it.
I'm going more for two people fighting in front of a pub, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It really does. That's quite that's a delightful thing to say. That's just blown my mind for a little bit. As I was doing that. That's really interesting. I mean, so you talk about
Eyebrow stuff.
a little bit the influence on you, but because you've now become quite influential to other people, large multi-million Hollywood studios seem to sometimes take an awful lot of effort trying to replicate exactly what you did on certain pages on the huge big screen. Do you find this in any way flattering or annoying?
If they pay me, it's flattering.
And do they pay you?
Well, let's say that there needs to be some back and forth with that.
I mean, how about yourself? Because to some degree, a good chunk of the MCU seems to be taken from a lot of your work, Adi. How do you find that?
I mean, it depends. I guess if it's done well, I'm flattered. If it's done badly, I'm frustrated. Especially if, because I worked on quite a few of the movies directly, and some of my best work was on, a couple of films that weren't that good. And it gets frustrating because nobody then looks at those movies and thinks, oh yeah, but they have really good design. They think, oh yeah, that was a bad movie. So that is frustrating just because so much effort goes into it, and then it's undone by various different things. There are 1,000 different reasons why something can be good or not good.
But is the money better? Is the money better?
Not necessarily. No, I mean it's more kind of going back to being employed versus being unemployed. Money is more guaranteed for a period of time, but it's not necessarily better, if that makes sense. Working on a film, if it's a big film, at least I'm guaranteed like 6 months that I don't have to actually hustle to schedule myself and what's next and stuff like that. So from that perspective, it's great. But overall, I wouldn't really say. Yeah, kind of ebbs and flows.
Got you. I would have asked Esad about your most recent work and how it's going to be seen in the world. Because the Aliens Avengers book that we've been seeing from Marvel has been very, very popular. And I've just been seeing all the first few sketches coming through from the new Secret Wars movie, which seems to be very much based on your work from Marvel as well. So, how do you think about your work at the moment and the way it's being perceived by an audience? Are you happy with the way people react to your work and will do?
Here's the thing, I don't know if this is a typical view, but it's my view definitely. Whatever I wanted to do with what I did, is what I did on the page. If somebody wants to redo it in a different way, because they've done like motion comics based on my stuff, like way back when it was popular shit, when everybody thought that would be future. And I was like, well, good for them, you know, like, really I don't give a shit. Like, whatever you see on the screen, how much they use of my stuff, sometimes they use a lot, sometimes almost nothing. It's its own thing. It doesn't really have that much relation to me and my work. Like, if somebody sees the movie and then wants to read the comic, great. That's what I see as a new victim. But those movies are so much different from what we did on the pages that I really don't see them. None of those are actually adaptations of the original stories. They change way too much to be that. So I don't know, like I don't find it flattering. I find it like I think I deserve some money for a design that you did here and not paid me. That's how I see it. My art statement is in a book, you know.
I can add a little bit to that just from the other perspective, I guess, because from personal experience, I know that people on the art side of things are always very concerned. Because I'm people on the art side of things in Marvel Studios, and they're always very concerned to be very respectful and actually hire the artists. But a movie is a massive machine, and then there are so many egos that get involved. And then if you get a really big ego who doesn't really care about comics at all, they will always think, well, I'll just take this and make it my own. That's where then it becomes a kind of a thing where the work isn't respected, it's literally just used as a jumping off point. So it's a bit of because I've seen it happen to my work, as I'm working on it, I've seen it happen. So I can imagine how frustrating it might be, you make your statement, but even people working on the movie themselves, they feel, well, this is my statement, and then by the time it actually makes it to screen, it is very different from what they've done.
But that's the point, really. The statement in the movie gets made by director, writer, maybe producer. So all this art stuff serves them, but it's only used as the tool for.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So the thing is that really, like, I wouldn't expect if somebody decided to do direct, adaptation of any of my books. Even in that case, I wouldn't really see it as my extension of my statement. It's somebody else's statement of that. Whatever I did, it's in the book and nowhere else. Take it or leave it.
Well, I'd like to ask about the other direction, because I said your most recent work that we've seen, Aliens vs. Avengers. Now, you've been working with the Marvel characters for a good little while. Did you have any issues with working on the aliens in terms of Fox or other people having to get involved?
Yes, because they can micromanage stuff that I think is mostly inconsequential. Because they will blow up the panel and find the alien that's like this big. Oh, you didn't use reference here. No shit, stuff like that. And in the end, you end up doing corrections for that kind of stuff, and it's completely inconsequential because it's like this in original. When it gets printed, it's going to be like this. So, only important thing about this watch is like that you recognize this is alien, nothing else. You know? But there's somebody there who needs to go with the so that's annoying because it kind of kills your flow. You have to go back and redo stuff and shit like that. And then at some point somebody decided I've done a bunch of aliens who were like opening their mouth. Like. At some point I was already almost done. Somebody decided that, oh, can we shut their mouths? I'm like, what's the reason? You know, like, yeah, I can do it, you know, I got computer, but why? You didn't mind it for months, and now suddenly I have to... I still don't know.
Is that the kind of thing that's going to affect which projects you choose in the future? Are you going to move away from those kind of...
Yeah, let's say, like, I don't like any of that stuff where some studio or something outside of the company I work for is involved, because it always is like that. And it's let's put it this way, it's a completely different job. Two of us, we are colleagues, but when he does work for studio, we are not. It's completely different kind of work that's done. Use for it is different, what you're actually doing is different. They end up doing a lot of, you know, like iterations and stuff like that. There's many people inputting, it's completely different stuff, you know, so I see myself as just a comic artist. So less of committee stuff I see, the better.
How about yourself, have you had similar reactions over the years, interactions?
I mean, it's always, the thing is, especially with, because Marvel Comics are actually really, really quite easy to work with.
Yeah,
my experience.
Yeah.
You know, there's always pushback, and you get an editor who, you know, wants to make a mark or whatever, and, you know, but overall Marvel has always been very easy. So it's always a bit of a surprise when like another license joins, and they have different methods and different ways, and they don't understand how comics work, so they start judging everything as if it's an advertising campaign or something like that. So my kind of point of view is that I understand where it comes from, but it's no less frustrating when it happens. Because it's happened to me, and I have to redo something, or I have to do something that I don't agree with. And I walked away from a lot of projects because I realized once it starts going that way, I'm not the person for that job. Because I want to be happy with what I've done, and if it's going to be art directed completely, you know, out of my kind of realm of what I want to do, then money isn't enough of an incentive to do it. So I'd rather do just something that, you know, will pay hopefully just as much, but that I will actually be happy with. So even though, like I said, you know, I end up doing a lot of different types of work when I work for these big studios and within production and stuff like that, I still try to do it to create a space for myself. And I have to say, for Marvel Studios, when I work with Ryan Haggerty, who's the head of visual.
It's probably the best studio for that.
100%, because Ryan himself is an artist, and he wants to let artists do art. He doesn't want to micromanage. Ryan will then fight battles that other places I have to fight. So Marvel Studios is probably the least worst for that kind of thing. But
it's better than Fox.
I've only done one cover for Aliens. I really liked it, but it did have an element of exactly where I was like, oh why? And those vowels. It was so simple. It was the design of the foot, and I was like, but here's a reference that has the exact foot that I did, but no, they had at that point some other reference they wanted the foot to be like. So
Imagine if HR Giga had had that feedback.
Oh God, well, yeah, they did. That's the thing with him. Yeah, because that's why he had a huge falling out with him, you know, for decades. It's only he came back around because of all the money he made from it later. So, you know, but maybe if I was making, you know, millions, I'd come around too.
Well, I was talking to you earlier today, talking about your having a change in career, almost the focus away from things like video games and comics and stuff towards the cards. Can you talk about that journey or where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, that's been my experience. It always seems like, just to rewind a little bit back, when I was in that position when, you know, people around me were saying, like, oh, are you going to get a real job and stuff like that, I had this idea, probably, you know, it might seem like a crazy idea, but I was like, if the art is good enough, it's like, life will find a way kind of thing. And it has been that way. So, over the years, different things have come and gone, where you know, suddenly movies are a big thing. So I'm working on movies, and then TV stuff is big, and the movie world dies off, but TV stuff picks up, or the TV stuff suddenly dies off, and video games pick up. And then video games was kind of, like I was talking to you earlier, it was kind of like 3-4 years ago. And then suddenly video games just plummeted. You know, they had massive problems. And for some reason, suddenly again, and I think it's probably because the same audiences that support video games suddenly lose interest and they look for other places to put their, you know, hobby and money into. So suddenly now it seems to be the collector cards, both digital and physical.
You know what it might be though? It might be investor fashion.
That's a huge thing as well.
Like where literally they invest a shitload of money in this, and now it's kind of on a graph. It goes down. It still makes billions, but it's, you know, like, oh yeah, let's move and find something else. And then a bunch of them puts their money into something else, and suddenly that gets flooded with money and prominence. You know, so it seems to me like investor fashion thing.
I mean, I think you're 100% right. I just think from my, like I was saying earlier, it's like comic books or comic book artists are kind of the core of it. It's like cockroaches. We will survive kind of thing. That's what I was saying, you know, so it seems like the good art hopefully finds a way to find a market. You know, whatever that market may be, and in my experience, I think because I've diversified so much from early on in my career that it seems like I notice these trends happening because they come to me, and I just realize suddenly I'm turning down so much work for cards, but video games have completely died off. But 2 years ago, big cards weren't even on my radar, but video games were constantly, you know.
What's becoming a good market lately? Church murals.
Okay, so we're back to the Renaissance.
Are you really, really serious? Do you have any church mural plans in you, Esad? What? Do you have any church mural plans in you at all?
No. It seems that that's the industry that's going to pick up at some point.
I mean, in all seriousness, if you go, I went to the National Gallery yesterday, and it's like, if you look at like Rembrandt, you know, he did religious paintings, and then as the focus shifted, he became a portrait painter. And it's the same thing, you know, it's just, you go where the market is. You know, and it's like changing trends, and literally there was suddenly like Flemish painters and Dutch painters, because they became Protestant, they lost all the work that the Catholic Church was giving them, and instead focused on scenes from life. And that became the popular thing, and that's why Flemish artists did mostly scenes from life, because the religious paintings just weren't popular there. So it's the same thing, you know, for video games, you know, or card art or whatever.
I would like to ask you something you mentioned there about investment changes. How do you feel about being figures of investment that people can put money into, collect your things, and then sell for hundreds of thousands of pounds down the years? How do you feel about being that kind of person? At least we're still alive.
You know, because in the past it only happens to dead artists. So
if I'm paid well.
Guys, do you have any questions? This is probably one of those good moments that we have. If not, I've got lots of things to ask, but Lenny. Yeah. Oh, we've got a microphone going on.
Thank you. I've actually got a question each. Well, I'll try and be as quick as I can with them. Adi, I'll start with yourself. You're now a Yorkshire lad, like myself, from up north. You live now in a very quite rural and quite quiet part of the world, and it's a very pretty part of the world. Has that changed your tempo or the way that you approach your art? Has it changed your approach to how you do it? Has it slowed you down in having a slightly slower tempo up north, or is it something that, does your environment not affect how you all work?
I've actually been asking this question of myself for years, because I mostly grew up in urban environments and lived in urban environments for a very long time, and I've wondered whether it has affected my kind of, and I would say it probably has, because I'm interested more in organic stuff. I find myself, rather than, before I was always a lot more into kind of science fiction and like hard surface type of stuff, and I still do it, and I like it, but I do find myself wanting to do more trees and that kind of stuff. No, seriously, it's like that, like for backgrounds and stuff, I like placing my characters into like those kind of environments.
Naturalistic.
But my studio is looking out at a really amazing oak tree, and no, sorry, it's not oak tree, it's cedar. I look at it every day, and I see the light kind of come out and go down. So it has to influence me. So yeah, definitely has changed it.
Are we going to be looking at a good trees-based graphic novel coming for you at some point in the near future?
Probably, if I win the lottery, all I'm not doing is just painting trees.
And
about superheroes.
And for yourself, when I've approached you at your table in the past at conventions, I've often had to wait because you are very focused. Certainly when you're not doing your work at your table, it's something you very much focus on, and I appreciate that, because that's what you're absolutely locked in on, doing a piece of work. I'm curious what you like then in your studio in terms of distractions. What is your studio set? Do you like music in the background, or do you like to focus and have no distractions?
Let's put it this way, I listen to music a lot. I listen to YouTube debates where people are fighting all the time about something,
That is YouTube, generally.
For example, yeah. So all of that stuff. It depends, but certain things I discovered that I really want to do in quiet. So if I'm doing layouts, no distraction. But my layouts don't look like anything. They're just potatoes, stuff like that. For that, I need peace. For everything else, it's kind of building on that. So after that, it's music or whatever.
What's on the Esad Ribic Spotify playlist?
I don't have a Spotify.
Metal?
Yeah, I like metal, but I'm one of those idiots who still buys CDs, and I never stopped. So I'm not one of those hipsters who started buying them again, I just never stopped. So I don't have Spotify list, I don't have enough, I got my collection, I listen to all kinds of stuff. From, I don't know, metal, orchestral, whatever, jazz.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Lee.
I'll just check if there's any others before I move on. No, we're good for now. Okay, so you were talking about how you've been living more kind of rural life. How have you found England compared to the other countries that you've been living in? Can you tell us how you find it as you visit?
I've been here 20 years this year, so it's the longest I've ever lived anywhere. Because I've lived in the US for 10 years, but I like England a lot. I wish the weather was not as because it's one of those things. It's a stereotype that the Brits always talk about the weather, but it's like when you can depend on it, of course you're going to talk about it, because it's always something. Oh, it's too hot, it's too cold.
Well, why do you stay here? when you could go anywhere, as an international man who's lived in so many countries.
My wife and I sometimes talk about it, and we're like, well, everywhere else has problems too. So we go and we visit, and we're like, oh, this place would be really nice to live. And then you spend a bit of time there, and you're like, yeah, maybe not, because their problems are just as bad and often worse than problems here. So I like England, I really do. I'm very much at home here, and I became a citizen a long time ago. So it's as much home as any place has ever been.
And how about yourself, Esad? You do visit here quite a few times for shows and things. How do you find it?
Yeah, first it's kind of funny. Like first time I went to England was in '89. We were on a bus going to Brixton for a show, and same night we went on the same fucking bus back home. So that was my first time in England. I spent 2 hours in the pub across the fucking venue, and then we got drunk on the venue and fell asleep, and up to like, I don't know, 18 hours to Zagreb in the stupid bus.
Sounds like a perfect introduction to England.
Yeah, it picked up after that. Although it stayed exactly the same in one interesting, you might call it cultural feature of England that's probably most prevalent here. It's binge drinking on a Friday night, seeing shitload of dead drunk people at like 8 p.m. already. That's something I could never understand. You know? That's my fascination.
I still don't understand it. 20 years later, I'm still amazed by the scenes in the train station on a Friday and Saturday.
Because first time I did a show in England, I had this situation. Oh, let's go out and drink. I'm like, oh, great. You know, I just met some new friends and stuff. And half an hour later, they're already drunk, and I got nobody to talk to. You know, because when I go out to drink, I don't go out to get drunk as fast as possible. I want to have a long night of, talking to people, having fun and stuff like that. And preferably, I don't want to get drunk at all, you know? But to them, it was all like, oh, triple whiskey, and, that's something I just cannot wrap my head around.
Well, I mean, you both kind of travel the world through comic conventions or just general festivals and the like. What other countries do you find, what do you have from other countries in the way they regard, say, people or comics, or can you see other places you might like to be?
Like to be in what way?
How do you find other countries compared to Britain?
Mind you, England is a fine country, apart from that.
Yeah,
I just want to make myself clear.
But also different regions of different countries are very different as well. You know, like US is so huge, and I've done conventions in the US, like I said, for 10 years, and it's very, very different from not just one coast to the other, but literally one state from the other. So it's, quite different. I think for me, England, nowhere is far. Everywhere is like, because people say like, oh, you live in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, yeah, it's 20 minutes away from Leeds, kind of thing. So it's not really, it's 200 miles from London. That's not that far. In American terms, that's down the road, kind of thing.
That's a commute, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's a commute, yeah.
So, it's a different type of kind of outlook on things. And we go, my wife and I go to Japan a lot, and I've done conventions there, but we also go for holiday there. And I really love it there, but I couldn't live there because I like a bit of the chaos that exists here.
That's why you like
So there's kind of an ebb and flow and like give and take, because in Japan they're very, very, it's a culture based on not wanting to feel ashamed, so they're trying to avoid pretty much anything that they might be ashamed of, kind of thing. So to me, I'm like, you gotta sometimes just do something, something crazy or something unexpected or whatever. So for me, it's I think England is kind of like happy medium, because the crazy stuff in the US usually involves somebody ending up dead. That is too far, kind of thing. So you know what I mean, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, you're saying.
I I agree.
Well, in that case, can I ask how can you travel? You both travel around the world. You see, how does everything you see around the world affect your work? When you work in a different country, does it change?
Everything. I mean, we went to Mexico a couple of times in the last few years, and it just blew my mind. I mean, just seeing the culture there and the art and the history, and I mean, it reshaped rewired my brain. I just couldn't believe.
Pop culture doesn't really does it justice.
No, that's the thing, especially again, Mexico always gets like a kind of a tough time, especially from the American perspective. But then you go there and you're like, oh my God, the amount of just level of culture, art, and history, and just visiting different sites, different historical sites, going to museums and seeing, that, like I said, really did rewire my brain completely. I just couldn't, seeing it in books or seeing it on TV or whatever, just doesn't do it justice at all. And Japan is the same. Again, I love going there because it's, again, you can read about it, you can see it, but actually experiencing it in person, you're like, oh wow, this really is a culture on a different, it's like that have developed in parallel. So it's not a culture that's been, it's much more influenced and cross-pollinated now.
But it's its own thing.
Yeah, its own thing, and it really does completely change your outlook on things, or at least it does for me. Suddenly you start understanding things, because I'm really into cars, and you see a Japanese car, and you're like, where does this come from? Where did this design come from? And then you're there, and you're like, it comes from that. That's the lineage of it. So,
That's fantastic. I had a very similar experience when I went to Iceland. So it's European, but just not quite. It had a different influence. So I love to see that. Are there any other kind of cultures that you admire in that kind of way?
I gotta say, I'm really most influenced by nature in other places. So I can kind of see direct influence, going to some place and then, last year I was in Argentina, in Rosario, and it's like next to fucking big river, the river is so big that even 500 kilometers away from the sea, you get huge tankers parked there. And then I did a couple of scenes with the huge rivers like that, without even thinking it. And for example, it's that kind of stuff. This is what kind of leaves biggest impression on me. Not so much human achievement. Like I liked, the pyramids in Mexico, obviously, but most of the time I spend there just watching the fucking mountains.
Mobius, I was also a huge Mobius fan. He had the whole phase when he was doing this Western art and desert scenes.
Exactly, yeah.
And I was like, why is he so influenced by that? And then I went to the desert in Nevada and California, and I was like, okay, now I get it. It's just, overwhelming, that open sky that here we just don't have. That dry air, so you can see so much further than you can here, because here the moisture in the air blurs everything as you come. And suddenly you understand, that's why Mobius is like Western paintings are so sharp. It's because it is sharp. When you're there, it's just crazy sharp.
Can you remember years ago I did illustrated book about Hawaii, and they sent me there, and I was in one of those volcanoes, and when you look at that stuff, the air is so clear that it looks fake in front of you. There's no depth to it, because what gives you the feeling of depth is dirty air. So it kind of, the colors slightly change, more air there is between you and whatever you're watching. So the mountain is blue, pale blue, further away. But in higher altitudes on Hawaii, it's not. It's the same fucking color. because it's 3,000 meters above the ground. It's very clean. There's a Pacific wind that kind of cleans it up. So unless the volcano erupts, it's unnaturally clear. And that's when you're like, what the fuck is this? I'm not sure how big this crater is in front of me. And then you see people that are like, oh, okay, so crater is like 2 kilometers. It looks much smaller, much closer, you know. I don't remember seeing that anywhere else.
So have you tried to recapture that in your artwork?
No.
Any plans to?
No, you can't. It just looks fake.
Wow.
That's exactly the point. You know?
Okay, that's actually quite beautiful to hear that. I would like to ask, can you tell me what you guys are working on at the moment? If there are, and if not, please tell us anything you'd like to do.
Right now, I started a new project I shouldn't talk about because let's leave it to the publishers. So I'm doing something. I'm not really unemployed. And I'm doing quite a lot of covers because I was for years exclusive to Marvel and I couldn't really do a lot of stuff around it. So now I'm not anymore, so I can do a bunch of stuff. So yeah, maybe too many covers because I'm late on like 3 covers right now.
And you went and came to a comic convention in London when you could have been.
Look, back when I said yes to this show, those covers were not ordered yet. So.
And how about yourself, is it?
I mean, like I said, those cards that I was mentioning, I'm actually working on a bunch of card art, doing a bunch of covers. That's about it, really.
Is there anything you'd like to be doing? Anything you'd like to be doing, you're not doing quite yet?
No, I'm quite happy with what I'm doing at the moment. We'll see what, you know, when I finish these deadlines, we'll see what, you know. But yeah, I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing.
Oh, we're gonna get tree cards. That's what I want to know. We're gonna get this tree on the cards.
Maybe we'll do like a sticker album, just like, you know, English trees, and I can illustrate it.
That would be absolutely beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming to join us and talking us through the much amazing work. I'm looking forward to seeing so much more of it. I'd like to say, please, can we say a big thank you from the main audience for Esad Ribic and Adi Granov who'll be at their tables before our return weekend. So it's fantastic.
We're done for the day, actually.
Oh, tomorrow. Return. It's fantastic.
Yeah. See you tomorrow, guys.
See you tomorrow as well. Great.